Denver Broncos Mile High View, no commercials, no bullshit. So how about my prediction for Juwann Winfree? Coming up with that great catch at the end. I highlighted him before the game. But they really, the quarterback play was really pretty bad. Well, I'll get into all that later. But I want to talk about the highlights. I think one of the biggest things that I noticed for the early backups early on was a couple of the big things for me. It had more to do with the offensive line, the discipline of the team. A caller had called into Sports Talk Radio, and she made a point that she was talking as if I was talking. And she said, if this team is undisciplined, like it has been for the last 2, 3, 4 seasons, you have every right to get fucking pissed off. You have every right to get fucking pissed off. And it seemed like the offensive line for the first time was really disciplined. They seemed decent. But again, this is an Atlanta defense. Again, let's just put things in perspective. It's their backup defense, and Atlanta's defense wasn't all that good to begin with. I think that's one of the issues they have are some defensive issues. They're trying to bolster their defense. Their defense was a bit of a letdown. So this by no means is the final word on this, but at least it's a nice indication that they're stepping in the right direction. The offensive line for the Denver Broncos, that is. You'll see, how will this be once we see, the top defensive lines, on some of these teams. That's when but at least there's some hope that they're making some progress. Also, what I want to say, I saw that was a bit on the positive side was, at least in the beginning, when Hogan was commanding the offense, there at least was what I call some decent play calling, and this is the interesting thing, that when we had Musgrave, everything was it was pocket quarterback, vanilla type. There wasn't any diversity in the offense, I guess what I'm saying. So I saw a lot more diversity in the offense. Passes being thrown, not the same routes being run, the same offensive scheme being run over and over and over again, expecting something different to happen. It was a little bit refreshing to see that. The only problem with that kind of an offense, too, is if you start getting cutesy. If you, keep a tradesman, passing the ball around, different, but let's not get too cute. Sometimes Musgrave would try to get cute, too, and it was just stupid. But the offensive play calling, it seems to have taken a step in the right direction, too. If you have a pocket quarterback, you got the receivers and the offensive line, hell, run with that. Because that's what you do. But we just don't have that personnel. So it was nice to see a little diversity. Okay, so let's go to defense. Defense, they weren't exactly playing Matt Ryan and their starters. So from that standpoint, it's still an unknown, and their starters weren't there. So, but there were things, Dre'Mont Jones came in at the end. They put him in. He came up big, but he was, again, playing the scrubs. But he was really starting to come through in a big way, which you would actually expect if they put a starter out there to do. He was starting to act like a starter. There were some hits and misses out there going on with the defense, but what else? I'm just trying to think what else, anybody else that really stood out on defense. You can chime in and tell me if anything really stood out. I mean, they were stout, disciplined. They played a fairly good game. But like I say, it's just right now it's hard to tell, make any kind of really judgments with that. How about this one? How about Muhammad on offense? How about that guy? I mean, we never heard sports talk radio locally here in Denver ever talk about that guy. He looks like he could be, you could throw him in a special situation. Just as throwing a curveball, he could catch the ball, and he's definitely great in space. Definitely, I think, a keeper there. But they were too busy talking about Drew Lock. And I'm just going to say it, he sucked. The offensive line actually did a really good job. Receivers actually got open, and he was under and overthrowing. And that's Drew Lock. And I think this is another one of Elway's bad picks for a quarterback. I don't want to groom the next Bledsoe, a guy that's good enough to lose the championship game for you, whatever, lose the playoff game for you, because he's either airmailing or underthrowing. So yes, I understand. It's his first game, but quite frankly, I mean, former Virginia quarterback Ben Kurt for Atlanta totally outplayed him. I mean, and what does that say? I mean, what does that really say? And I'm not saying Ben Kurt he had some zip on the ball, was getting it out there, and he probably is a good backup to Matt Ryan, but, I mean, he was only on the practice squad last year. I mean, in all fairness, I guess, to Locke, is he had been around the system, but, I mean, he was only on the practice squad last year. So, I mean, he's not really that much of a step up in the learning curve. But Locke... like I said, I think of Drew Bledsoe, and I say that because when I lived in New York, I had to watch all these Patriot games, and I was stuck watching them and New York Giants games. And, I'd watch Drew Bledsoe do the same thing, either overthrowing or underthrowing. And then Brady stepped in, and he was very accurate. He didn't have the arm that Bledsoe had. No, he was a noodle arm. All you noodle armors out there, when you compare it to Drew Bledsoe, but, he was accurate. Rippin, I couldn't get, was hard to gauge Rippin, because he was playing with the third, most of those guys aren't going to be on the team, even Rippin. And it's sad that, in my opinion, but anyway, what I'm trying to say, it was hard to gauge Rippin, but he threw up the pass. At least he knew the pass in the end that he had to throw. Yes, Jamar Winfree made a spectacular play, but he gave him that opportunity to do that. And that was the guy to do it with, too. And I'll give Rippin credit for that. He picked the right guy for that play. I don't know. There was one time, yes, that Locke threw to a guy in motion, and he dropped the ball, and that's also concerning too, is all these dropsy doodles, the fumble. And then how about, okay, we're going to talk about one of the former defensive players that is it Lindsey? And it's not Lindsey, it's Langley running up. And didn't this just seem like Musgrave, the Vance Joseph Musgrave era all over again, when Langley runs up trying to make a play when he shouldn't do that. Just he shouldn't have even ran up for it. And he ends up fumbling the ball. It's just so typical. The special teams, I think, is going to have to be something that needs to be really looked at. Maybe that's where Muhammad comes in. Maybe he's a guy that you just tell him, just catch it. Hey, if you can break one out, you can break one out. But that could be a place where Muhammad gets a job, is in some kind of a return capacity. But catch the ball first, and if you get an opportunity, then, take it. But first do the smart thing. Call the fair catch, or, just catch the damn thing. But Langley, that was just stupid. Sue Craven's play on the opening was great. Some of the the defense in the beginning was good. A lot of flying around. Overall, I think that they didn't get a lot of penalties. Overall, I was pleased with the like I said, wide receiver is definitely an issue. At least these backups anyway. We have yet to see Sutton and the rest. We got to see how that goes. That's another thing. And and Locke, like I'm telling you, there's no way they can make Locke the backup. I mean, he's not even close. He's got a long way to go, and I'm glad that Fangio is like telling Elway, you got a hard throwing pitcher, but the guy can't pitch. The guy can throw a fastball, but he can't pitch. And I'm telling you, there are linemen that can throw the ball hard and far, but that doesn't make them quarterbacks. And what's really scary is this guy really was never a signal caller. They would just give him some sort of the signals were already, it was the coaching staff in the college that gave him the signal, and he'd clap his hands. And everybody knew what they were supposed to do. And, I mean, it's just a guy that it's just, I don't know. I think that, I'm going to keep watching Greedy Williams because the Broncos could have got Greedy Williams, picked him up, and there's no guarantee Harris is going to be here next year. And I just was opposed to the Locke pick, and after watching it tonight, I'm more opposed to it now more than ever. And like I said, yes, you could develop him, but is he going to develop into a Drew Bledsoe, a guy good enough to lose you championships?